Hello, thanks to anyone who tunes in today. I'm Davina with the Pro Democracy Variety Hour and here to have a small conversation about Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, and his refusal to wear a mask to help protect the life of his colleague on the Supreme Court bench, Justice Sotomayor, who has diabetes and is at high risk for severe complications or negative outcomes if she contracts COVID. So all of the other justices on the Supreme Court bench agreed to wear a mask. Gorsuch refused, meaning, well, not meaning, because he could have stayed home instead if he didn't want to participate in the group mask wearing courtesy exercise. But instead, Justice Sotomayor is contributing to opinions from her home and broadcasting in or Zoom conversationing in. And the reason why this is important is because it's part of our understanding that we need to have about what often fuels conservative intellectuals who rise to positions of power and are uniquely enabled by virtue of the significant financial backing from conservative white nationalist billionaires like Charles Koch, that a significant number of the public presume that they are good people, that conservatives are synonymous with good Christian values and caring about others and potentially pro-life. Gorsuch ruled in favor of a company that fired a truck driver for abandoning his truck and abandoning the load inside the truck because the brakes failed, and he walked away rather than freeze to death because it broke down in an area of the United States that was freezing temperatures at that point. He walked away. His company fired him for violating the company's rules of don't abandon your load. And the other justices ruled in favor of the truck driver, that he had gone to save his life. And Gorsuch was a pinnacle of that type of conservative thinking, which favors wealthy interests. And it's a very important understanding to reach. I'm no Bernie Sanders and I'm no proponent of socialism, and I'll always be happy to meet people on common ground with denouncements of communism and how communism is a system of governance that has that has typically led to authoritarian, oppressive style governance, resulting in man-made mass famine and man-made mass imprisonment, re-education, and death. So yes, boo to communism, but yay to the middle ground of recognizing that any democracy that tries to counter the interests of the mass voting public with purchasable democracy through people who are able to donate an untethered amount of money to the election campaigns for Supreme Court justices or to politicians. That's a democracy in which the will of the people is being countered by, in a damaging way, by the interests of the moneyed elite, who can often pursue their own interests at the expense of people's lives in general. COVID makes that very evident because one particular billionaire, Rupert Murdoch, initially from Australia but moved to the US and became a US citizen, owns Fox News together with his son Lachlan Murdoch, who's similarly conservative but also anti-life. And they've been using that platform, that significant platform that is embedded in a symbiotic way with the Republican Party. It supports Republican politicians regardless of the facts of any matter. It promotes Trump, it promotes sedition, and it promotes anti-science. It promotes a type of contrarian, defiant thinking, anti-medical advice thinking that is currently killing a significant number of Americans, close to 2,000 Americans each day, primarily unvaccinated people, often white unvaccinated people who have had over a year to get vaccinated, but feel so strongly resistant to the idea of getting vaccinated, in no small part thanks to the propaganda that emanates from Murdoch-owned Fox News. Now, what could they possibly gain from killing off a certain number of the audience? Well, COVID doesn't kill everybody who contracts COVID. There is a subset that go on to have more rapid negative sequelae and may be intubated, have their lungs so scarred that they can't sustain life, particularly if they're so resistant to the idea of taking COVID seriously that they resist medical care and they resist going to the hospital even when their symptoms of COVID are worsening. Those people are more likely to enter a vegetative state or die and suffer from some of the clots associated with COVID, which is a microvascular disease, not merely a respiratory condition. Why would Fox be happy for its audience members to die? It's a subset, and it's more important to Fox to be able to give them something to be angry about so that they can't slow down, look around, and be angry that they were lied to about Trump. Trump, who damaged the economy with his misbegotten trade wars, whereby he lied to the American people about what a tariff is, how it works, and who was bearing the cost of those tariffs, namely the American public bearing the costs passed to them by manufacturers and by importers on all of the goods that they consumed that are imported from China. And Chinese businesses were not wearing the costs of those tariffs. It was more strongman authoritarian showmanship that he instigated these trade wars in the first place. He knows that it's often a postural policy that can give a boost to a strongman's followers who want to cheer in any conflict situation. So you create conflict unnecessarily, you lean into protectionism, even when you know that's going to work out in an adverse way for the economy as a whole. And it was inducing a recession in America's manufacturing industries, which import a lot of component pieces from China, and inducing a recession in the farming sector, which was only mitigated against by Donald Trump throwing $28 billion of public money in assistance to those farmers, which was only going to be a Band-Aid, a very expensive $28 billion Band-Aid on those problems, and not a permanent fix to the severed trading relationships that Trump was involved in severing through instigating a tit-for-tat escalating trade war standoff with China and other trading partners of the United States. So Fox, to stop its viewers from questioning, hang on, is it treason to incite a riotous mob to attack the Capitol? Is it treasonous? Is it seditious to encourage electors from, are we up to 7 states now? 7 states having false electors proclaim themselves to be the official electors, submitting forged documents to the National Archives to claim that, yes, Trump won the election in these states. We have certified the outcome. Biden didn't win. No. So all of the people with standing in their community, with a profile as Republican players in their state, signed their names to forged documents. Such was their conviction that Trump in power again would make everything okay, would pardon anybody involved in a plot to overthrow democracy, would make it all okay. This is a huge burden of knowledge for Trump supporters and Republicans who maybe slightly supported Trump, voted for him, but didn't subscribe to all of his ideas or all of his enthusiasms for trade wars and for demagogic denigration of minority groups. Maybe they were like, oh, he's a bit rude on social media. I wish he wouldn't tweet or get into flame wars with his enemies. But sure, I wish he had a bit more dignity. But he gets things done. What are the things he gets done? He shows the rest of the world how strong we are with his strongman posturing, and he wants to build that wall and keep out those migrants. And we understand that America is for Americans, real Americans, meaning real white Americans. And if you're a white Christian nationalist Trump supporter, you mean real Americans constitutes white Christian nationalists. And if you're a libertarian atheist Republican supporter, you think real Americans means white Americans. And you're inflating the risk of communism in the United States. America is not very communist-minded. Very few people, very few members of the voting public wish to dissolve public and private enterprise and hand over the control of everything to the government. But at the same time, most people want safety nets, and there's a lot of public support for social safety net programs such as unemployment benefits and all of the type of things that people often feel are entitlements, knowing that they've specifically contributed tax to the goal of having a treasure chest of billions and billions of dollars to pay out social security net payments with. Also, not necessarily knowing that Republicans have often been stealing from those specific treasure chest of accumulated taxpayer dollars for social safety net funding. I've got to go and pick up my children, but thanks for listening and thanks for tuning in and discussing how callousness on the Republican part might be embraced by some people who think, yeah, hurt my enemies, hurt people who aren't real Americans. That's great. May end up becoming the inadvertent victims of this Republican pseudo-populist positioning, because every day close to 2,000 Americans are dying from COVID, and obviously thousands upon thousands more are likely becoming afflicted with long COVID, namely symptoms that don't immediately resolve, that may persist. Pregnant women are getting microemboli, tiny clots in their placentas, and are sometimes losing their babies or losing their lives because it's under-discussed that pregnancy constitutes a comorbidity in connection with COVID. So all of these people whose lives are needlessly being put at risk because of the pervasiveness of anti-science disinformation and the pervasiveness of anti-authority unfocused defiance of the establishment, that also leads into then people being, even left-leaning people, being overly critical of the Democratic establishment because they just hate who's ever in power, and they don't understand that the political structures of the United States favors Republicans, favors white working class voters, disproportionately amplifies the impact and the power of their votes because of the Electoral College system, which grants additional influence to people living in smaller, less populous states, so diminishing the political impact of California and New York in favor of amplifying votes from Wyoming, and that this is a legacy from the Constitution, which made concessions to wealthy slave owners who wanted to preserve political power so that they could protect the institution of slavery against any moral, intellectual challenges and political challenges from people in more abolitionist-leaning states. And even in abolitionist-leaning states, there were still many people who favored not only slavery, but a hierarchy of race in which white superiority was acknowledged and supported by the political establishment and by structures and institutions in American society and American daily life. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you've enjoyed today's short pro-democracy variety hour. It was a pro-democracy 20 minutes, but thanks again for listening, and I hope to talk to you again soon. If you feel like you'd like to call in or be a contributor or a guest speaker, feel free to contact me. My Twitter handle is davcat43. Thanks again.